Hello and welcome to our writing lesson. Today we're going to learn consistent verb tense. We're going to learn how to use tenses consistently when we are writing a piece of essay. So join me as we go through all the slides, and I am your teacher, Mr. Mark. Let's take a look at what we are going to learn today in this lesson. First, we are going to learn the meaning of consistent verb tense. We are going to learn some tips that will help us maintain consistent verb tense. We are going to look at examples of inconsistencies in writing. There and then we'll try to have a skill that will help us maintain those inconsistencies. Then we shall have a summary of the lesson, and we end our lesson from that perspective. Now, let us look at the meaning of consistent verb tense. Verb tense consistency refer to keeping the same tense throughout the clause. We don't want to have one time period being described in two different tenses. If you have two or more time periods, start a new clause or a new sentence. Now, even with professionals, we sometimes commit these grammatical errors, especially in speaking. However, when it comes to writing, it becomes a qualified error. Therefore, we are going to learn how to avoid inconsistencies in our writing. So let us take some examples that will help us establish consistent verb tense. Now, here is an example. Say, Mark finished his essay, tidies his room, and went out for supper. So, in this sentence, we see the verb finished in the past tense, tidies in the present tense, and went in the past tense. In this case, we have got what we call inconsistency. So if you're writing and you write in short manner, you have committed a grammatical error. So how do we avoid this error? Let's see an example. We'll say, Mark finished his essay, tidied his room, and went out for supper. So this is consistent verb tense. In the first place, there are inconsistencies. The first example, Mark finished, tidies, went. But in the second example, after revisiting the sentence, we see that there is consistency. We are using the past tense all through. We can also write this. Mark finishes his essay, tidies his room, and goes out for supper. Here we narrate using the present tense. So in this case, there is consistency. So when we are writing, the tenses must connect. And this is what we mean by consistent verb tense. If you are using the past tense, except otherwise you need to move to another level, you maintain the past tense. If it is the present tense, you maintain the present tense. So that is what we mean by consistent verb tense. Now, let us look at some tips for maintaining verb tense. How we go about maintaining verb tense. The first tip says, do not shift from one tense to another if the time frame for each action or state is the same. So let's take an example. Say, the teacher explains the diagram to students who ask questions during the lecture. So here we have realized that we have two tenses. The teacher explains, and later we have the verb asked. So there is an inconsistency. So the only way we can maintain the consistency of the tense is to revisit the sentence. So let's see. We say the teacher explains the diagram to student who asks questions during the lecture. So in this case, we have consistent verb tense. We are using present tense all through. Now, we have settled the problem, as you can see, the one on top. And we can also write it in this manner. We'll say the teacher explained the diagram to students who asked questions during the lecture. So we have explained in the past and asked in the past, thereby making the sentence, the tense, a consistent verb tense. Clear? Now, let us look at another tip that will be very useful for us. We'll say you do shift tense to indicate a change in time frame from one action or state to another. This means that we can change based on the time structure. We want to put two times together in a sentence, so we can change the tense, but it is perfectly consistent. Let's see an example. The children love their new tree house, which they built themselves. So in this case, we have love and built, but the sentence itself is consistent because the children they still love the new tree house. Although that particular tree house was built some time past, that's why we use the past tense built, they are still in love with the tree house. So this makes it perfectly consistent. Clear? Now let's take another example. Before they even began deliberations, many jury members had reached a verdict. So we have began, which is in the past, and had reached, which is in the past perfect. Here it agrees a lot because the past, an action has been performed in the past that is yet to be performed, but we presume that it's going to be performed. Therefore, we use the word had reached, the past perfect. So in this case, there is a total agreement in both of the sentences that we have seen. The children love their new tree house, which they built themselves. Before they even began deliberations, many jury members had reached a verdict. So that is another tip. Let us look at a basic tip which says identify the verbs. Decide if there are unnecessary shifts in the tense. So that's one method. If you are going to eradicate inconsistencies, you have to identify the verbs and you see how those verbs work in a sentence. Example, we have those who want a good workout needed different kinds of equipment than those interested in an easy ride. So in this case, we have seen that there are inconsistencies. The want and needed. Want and needed. Okay? Now, how are we going to maintain this? Let's see. We have identified the verbs. Now we are maintaining it. We say those who want a good workout need different kinds of equipment than those interested in an easy ride. Let's look at more examples of consistent verb tense. We have two examples here, and let's see how we go about maintaining verb tense when we are writing. Now the first sentence reads, a wide seat makes the rider shift from side to side and it caused painful throbbing. The second one reads, once an experienced cyclist chose the proper bicycle, he or she knows how to ride it properly. Now, our task here is to see whether there are inconsistencies, and if there are inconsistencies, we make possible corrections so that the sentence becomes grammatically correct. Now, let's see this. So we realize that in this first sentence, we have two verbs that cause inconsistencies. Makes in the present and caused in the past tense. So these two have made the sentence inconsistent. Now, our task is to correct the sentence. And it should become like this. A wide seat makes the rider switch from side to side and it causes painful throbbing. A wide seat makes the rider switch from side to side, and it causes painful throbbing. So in this case, we have maintained consistency. We have used the verb makes in the present tense and causes in the present tense. So both verbs are in the present tense. Therefore, the sentence is consistent. It's consistently using a particular tense. Therefore, we have a correct sentence. Now let's take the other example. The other example reads, once an experienced cyclist chose the proper bicycle, he or she knows how to ride it properly. Now, we identify chose and knows as verbs that are inconsistent. So our task now is to make them consistent. And we have this. Once an experienced cyclist chooses the proper bicycle, he or she knows how to ride it properly. So in this case, we have chooses in the present and knows in the present. Now we have a consistent verb tense. So when you are writing, except otherwise, you need to change to relate time differences. Otherwise, you maintain the same verb, the same tense that you are using to write a piece of writing. So far so good. This is what we have learned in this lesson. We've learned that when we talk about consistent verb tense, we mean that all actions in a sentence that happen or happened at the same time are in the same tense. That if all the actions happen in the present or happen all the time, use the present tense for all verbs in the sentence. That if all the actions happened in the past, use the past tense for all the verbs. When writing, make sure that any time a verb tense changes, it is because the action the verb describes happened at a different time. Otherwise, the shift in tenses causes an inconsistency. So take note, these are the things that we have learned in this lesson. And mind you, don't forget, when you write, get these rules at the back of your mind to make your writing very, very consistent. Thanks for your kind attention. Please follow on your WhatsApp page and on the module for the notes and exercise. Thank you very much.